Welcome to Psychic Girls Next Door. We are your hosts, Lily Hibarino
and Shannon Miller. This podcast is for all spirituality enthusiasts and psychics next door to share tools, experiences, and spiritual practices that align with your highest vibrational self.
So we would like to start by defining the word psychic. And the word psychic is derived from the Greek word psychikos, which is of the mind or mental, and refers in part to the human mind or psyche. And the Greek word for that also means soul. And according to the Oxford Dictionary, a psychic is relating to or denoting faculties or phenomena that are apparently inexplicable by natural laws, especially involving telepathy and clairvoyance, which is the ability to see clearly, energy, pictures, beings, and aura. So you might hear us using the word psychic and clairvoyant interchangeably, but psychics and clairvoyants, they both have natural gifts, paranormal powers, and mystical insight. But we would like to share how our natural gifts as psychics develop through our life stories. So Shannon, how did you find out you were a psychic?
That is a great question, Lily. So I have had the ability to read a room or essentially they say oh, that girl can really read a room. That actually is what I can do. So I can read how many things or energies, or maybe they're ghosts, maybe they're angels, maybe they're other entities, from different dimensions, based on the frequency that I hear them at. So my clairaudience. So I've been able to do this since I was really little, 6 or 7. And so my first experience, I would hear someone walking down our hall as a kid, and then my sister would see that person walking down the hall, and it wasn't our dad. I come from a family of 4, my parents, and then my sister who's younger. And I grew up in the East Bay, in Antioch. Currently, we are in San Francisco in my mega room. So that's where we're recording our podcast. But so I've lived in San Francisco for about 8-9 years, something like that. And I grew up in the East Bay, in the suburbs. And my mom is really spiritual as well. And her mom is really spiritual as well. So later in life, I kind of figured out this is a family thing. And then my dad has had experiences with the paranormal, or when his dad passed away, he saw him walk through their bed and out the backyard, into the backyard. So, and then when my mom's mom passed away, she passed away on Halloween. And this is when I was 15. And my mom got the same voicemail, or the voice memo or mail. I'm like, what year was this on? It was on a flip phone, clearly. So she got the same recording of her telling someone where her mom was in the hospital back to her from no number. It just would show up on her phone every night at 3:33 a.m., the witching hour, as some of us know. And that was really kind of what solidified there's something else out there. But even as a kid, I could feel how people were feeling. I could, which is clairsentience, or feeling the emotions of others. I could really, honestly, I could pinpoint creepy men. That's one of my abilities too. When we were younger, we did swim team, and I would always tell my sister, don't sit on that man's lap. This grandparent who would always be, he just gave me weird vibes. And then a couple of my, just other older men who I've interacted with, I'm like, that is someone I can't trust. So it's really strong intuitive abilities. And then, later on, information came out that validated my intuitive abilities about these people, that I was like, oh my gosh, I totally knew it. And I could feel this person is not a good person, whether they're a man or a woman. But specifically, I can read if it's a low vibrational energy. That's something that I can pick up on. And so I've been able to do that since I was little, but I really refined my process and tapped into it in my early 20s when I moved to San Francisco, and I went to a meditation school in the Mission in San Francisco. And that's where Lily went as well. We both went to that same meditation school. And so I was able to, I had my aura read, and then I immediately was like, I need to learn how to do this. And it changed my life. I know that's so cliche to say, but it literally changed my life. I think before it was very ungrounded and very susceptible to because I can pick up on the energy of others, I can merge energy, and I think it became challenging to discern what my information was versus other people's, and what my energy was versus other people's. And I think, growing up Catholic, I early on, I think when I was 2, we were in church and I was like, I am so bored, so bored. So my mom grew up Irish Catholic. She wanted to carry on the tradition from her mom about going to church. And she essentially she wasn't really there either. She would leave her body a lot essentially and space out or daydream. And I don't really know how connected she felt to church, but my dad was not religious at all. And so I was able to identify very, very early on that organized religion is just not for me. I think it's a great outlet for community building. I think it provides a space for a lot of people to get that. For me, I was more spiritual. And so all these moments, this micro moments of kind of tapping in and tuning in to your intuition or reading energy, it just kind of paved the way of where we are today. And now we're starting a podcast about being psychic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Yeah. So, Lily, I would love to know more about you. How did you discover that you also have these psychic or clairvoyant abilities?
Yeah, no, thank you. I would love to share that. And thank you for sharing your story too. I have a lot of similar, events in my story too. So I am born and raised in Brazil, and I was born under very different religious practices, Catholicism, Buddhist, and we also follow a religion called Candomblé, which is this based African belief sort of religion. And it's very popular in Brazil, and they worship gods and deities. So I grew up a lot around that. And my nanny who raised me, she was sort of we call them, I don't even know what the word would be in English, but she was sort of like the priestess in this religion. And she dealt a lot with spirit guides and all that stuff. So there's all this information that was passed on to me at a very young age. And she was someone that would see spirit. Mm-hmm. And she was a psychic herself too, or maybe transmedium. But she would always say things oh, I see this and that. And I was always oh, okay, I kind of relate to that too, but as a child, not really aware,
right?
What is all this that you're seeing? But at a very young age, I would hear beings. I would hear spirit, and I was just terrified, especially at nighttime. Mm-hmm. And I shared my room with my sister, and I'm like, do you hear that? Mm-hmm. What are you talking about? Let me sleep. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was going crazy. And now I just started to kind of shut that down because I was so scared. Mm-hmm. But I've always had very lucid, psychic dreams. And that has followed me through up to this days. I still have a lot of psychic dreams. I have really crazy dreams sometimes. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of it was a little bit of a conflict too, I think, when I was growing up, because I went to a Catholic school. Mm-hmm. I went through my first communion. Mm-hmm. So it's as you mentioned, it's this very regimented, more organized, sort of.
Yeah, there's not a lot of individual thought.
No,
there.
Not at all. Yeah. There's a lot of this punishing, right?
Yeah.
It's punishing energy.
Catholic guilt.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, this is sinful. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of denial. and a lot of shutting down around that type of information. So at a very young age too, I just kind of never really resonated with all that. And I often would question, this type of teachings, even at school too. I had all these nuns that were like teaching me about the Bible. And I'm like, but why? Why do they say that? Why do we have to follow this? It was always followed by some punishing behavior. So I kind of grew up in that almost, but I was always very curious about like other religions, other people's beliefs. And at a point, then The Secret came out. I can't believe if I watched an Oprah or I saw the book coming out, but that just like attracted my interest. I was just like drawn to it. I'm like, oh my God, this is like really resonates with me, because it was talking about energy, about all this law of attraction. And so I started really taking a more and more interest in spirituality. But I kind of I explored, would find this like YouTube videos on meditation, people talking about it. I would kind of like listen here and there. I love reading books, all sorts of books related to spirituality. But in 2008, I actually dated a psychic. And he also went to clairvoyant training, where you just kind of train to hone in, to your intuitive skills. And he just kind of planted the seed, because he would play his meditations that he had recorded, in his computer. And he's like, oh yeah, let's meditate some of this things that I've learned in class. I'm like, okay. And I was kind of open to that. So a lot of the techniques and tools that we meditated back in the days are actually the tools and techniques that I use nowadays. So it's really amazing how, as I look back, like all the pieces of the puzzle, they all come together. But back in the days, I didn't really understand what meditation was and what being a psychic was. I just thought that I could just like ask him a question. I could just like tell the future.
Right.
And I would be like, I would ask him, I was like, so I'm thinking about applying for this job. What do you see?
Yeah.
And I thought he was kind of like that, predicting the future. And now I know that being a psychic it's way beyond that.
Very different.
Yeah. It's like, I had a very limited vision back in the days. But so again, he planted the seed. And as the years went by, I would go to this, I used to live in LA, and there was also this school for meditation and healing over there that he also introduced me to, where I would go to what they call their healing clinics. And healing clinics is basically their clairvoyant students, they will look at a question or issue that you bring in, and they look at the energy and the blockages around that. So he would bring me in. I'll be like, oh my God, this is really cool. They're giving me all this information. So I would kind of go in every now and then. And then I moved to San Francisco. As you can tell by my story, Shannon's story, it's kind of like how it kind of opened to, right? It was kind of almost like the catalyst for diving in more into our psychic skills. So I moved to San Francisco, and then Shannon and I met at this organization, and we both shared, this deep interest in spirituality. And I think we were talking about it during lunch break. And then she mentioned the school for meditation and healing. And so that we went in to, I don't know if it was like a sample class that they had. It was actually one of the healing clinics. I think
it was the healing clinic.
Right.
Like a Monday night. Yeah. After work.
Yes.
Yeah.
We would go there, and it was just like our little adventure, right? I remember that it was so fun. And I would see those psychics, like, bringing in all this information. I thought it was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
I was just so fascinated. I'm like, how do they do this? And I thought it was so, so interesting. But in the meantime, and I remember Shannon, you went in right away.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You were just like so ready.
Yeah.
To take the classes and go all in. But I was on the opposite end. I think I wasn't ready yet. The interesting thing was that like I saw you just kind of going through all this transformation. And I remember that back in the days, I was going through very challenging times. I, had challenge at work. I was very disconnected from myself. My body was going through all these health issues. I was dealing with anxiety and panic attacks. And it came to a point where I was like, you know what? I need to make a change.
Yeah.
And it kind of like reached that rock bottom, and it's interesting how rock bottoms actually propel you, right?
Oh yeah.
Like to
skyrocket you.
Skyrocket. And even if it's uncomfortable, you just have to go for it or kind of stay in the same place. So I just like decided to start taking classes at the school. And I was actually interested as I started taking classes and just learning, all these different tools, techniques, and honing in more on my psychic ability. Then I started actually naming things that I've gone in the past. I'm like, oh, so in my childhood, I was hearing and seeing spirit guides.
Right.
So now I was able to discern what it was. Or I'm also very open to, picking up other people's energy information too. And a lot of times I become very overwhelmed, and I also merge a lot of that energy in my physical body to the point that I actually feel it, whatever is other people's feeling. And I was actually also able to discern that, like, oh, okay, now I can tell what is my energy and what is not. And that was really powerful.
Yeah.
Really powerful. So just being able to pinpoint like all the things and just telling myself that I wasn't like crazy or imagining things.
Right. You're like, oh, maybe it's like the rational takes over and you're like,
yeah,
maybe I didn't hear that. Like maybe I didn't see that out of the corner of my eye or.
Yeah, exactly. Or that intuition, right? That told you like, yeah, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And you kind of override that. And you're like, yes, that was my intuition. My body just, sending me a message and I didn't really listen to it.
Oh yeah. And every time I haven't listened to my intuition, I'm like, well, I had to learn through the experience, I guess. Like,
the hard way.
The hard way. Yeah. Yeah. It definitely helps as a guide. So, we both went to the clairvoyant clinic, in like February 2015, I think. No, before that, maybe even like did we go in February? Cause I started.
It was like beginning of 2015 that when we went to the school to kind of explore, and then ended up really going into the program.
Yeah, because I can't remember if it was the end of 2014 or beginning of 2015, but I went right away. I just signed up and I immediately knew. But when did you actually, from like that time that we first went to the meditation school, how many months did it take?
Oh, it was like a year and a half.
Oh, year and a half.
It was a year and a half of that first time that we went.
Yeah.
And so it was more like towards, I want to say 2017.
Oh my God.
When I actually I decided to take classes. And the interesting thing is once I started taking classes, I never stopped.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to learn more and more and more to the point where currently I teach at the school.
Yeah.
So it's just so interesting, like where life takes you. And, because I had no idea that I would be where I am today, so it's been incredible to go through this journey of not only owning my psychic abilities, but also recognizing that I can use the psychic abilities to facilitate healing for others too, which is a great gift too.
Yeah. And honestly, the point of this podcast, like we want this to be like a place for you to be able to relate to some of the stories that we tell, some of the situations we've had to deal with. And also like, if you're energetically aligned, it's most likely going to match, and you're going to listen to this episode and be like, we want you to have like an aha moment, right? Like, just like, oh, that's why I was doing that. Or like, oh, this makes me feel so relieved that. And so, cause a lot of the images that we see or energy that we see when we are reading other people, like specifically when we went through the program, it's a healing for everybody involved. Like there's a matching energy. There's something, it's like a magnetic, charge that you can like de-energize and get out of your space, like really move out that information that's no longer serving you and just like bring in what you are truly desiring to know and operate from that divine cosmic wisdom. So that's essentially like with this podcast, we want this to be like a fun, entertaining, relatable place where you can feel safe. That's really, where I always want to feel safe at like, safe in my body, safe in my home. And that's probably a control thing for me that I need to unpack. And like, we can always dive into that in another episode. But I think what I'm most excited about is being able to feel seen. That's something that I've always struggled with, as someone who does have sensitivities or abilities to, read energy and pick up on energy in all types of forms. I never really wanted to talk about it because as soon as you start talking about it, people pay attention to you. And then like I grew up in a house where, my sister, it was the loud one and like crazy, like the kooky one. And I'm kooky too, but I was more introverted and shy. And I realized like I was operating from a place of like self-protection by, shutting my communication down and like making myself kind of feel small or like feel like I didn't want to be seen or if it wasn't safe enough to be seen in those moments. But as soon as I grew out of that, when I reached like, I think 8th grade was like a pivotal year. For me, I, wore Hot Topic only and I learned how to play the bass guitar. I gave up meat. I became a vegetarian. And, obviously I don't wear Hot Topic anymore.
Nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong with that.
If you want to still wear it, I support you. 100%.
Yeah, it was 2003. So very Avril Lavigne inspired. But I think that was when I realized like, I also have ADHD and, I got diagnosed in 2017 post the, clairvoyant training program we went through. But that's also an element that I see as a strength. I love that about myself. And before I think I've had it my entire life. And so a lot of neurodivergent people have abilities as well. They have strengths in different areas that neurotypical people may not have. And, I think that's something that we'll definitely explore more on this podcast and dive into, but,
yes.
It's all these resources that I've collected over the years of it related to this space and, have brought me like information that I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense about why I did the things that I did, or, why I was thinking the way I was thinking. But now I feel like this is definitely a healing opportunity for me to feel seen and feel heard, in those moments where I may not have felt that in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, when you speak up your truth, it is a healing opportunity when you do it in a safe space too. But it's interesting how you touch on the subject of being seen, because I think also being in the space, where you are sharing your psychic abilities, it is a way of being seen too. And I've seen a lot of people, even in my personal life, that are very intuitive and do have psychic abilities, and they are afraid, that others will judge them, or there's shame around it, whatever reasons. And one example is my mom. My mom is very intuitive. And, she will share things. And I noticed then when she starts speaking about it, she will shut herself down, so it's a way that she protects herself, for being seen as someone that does have disabilities. So I also find that this space of us talking about it is also a very empowering moment, just to really step up and just show to everyone that we both have our issues.
Right.
We're just human beings.
We all do.
We all do. We're human beings we're spirit in body, but we're having a human experience, but throughout all those challenges and the ups and downs, we just want to share how can you trust, your own information, your own intuition, and just be the best that you can be in this lifetime.
I could not have said that better myself.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And like being able to understand, like, when are those moments where you felt like it wasn't safe enough to feel seen, and like figuring out, like, whether it's through meditation, journaling, some type of like pastime reflection of like those moments where you may not have felt seen or heard, or you might have shut that down on your own accord because it wasn't safe enough to feel seen or heard, or to feel comfortable in your environment. And you can figure out, like, when you look at it from a neutral place, it's easier to look at the past situations, whether it's this lifetime or other past lifetimes, to figure out, like, was that really you and your information that was coming through, or was it somebody else's influence or perspective, or, basically information about how you should be in those moments or how you shouldn't be. And should energy is really interesting.
Yes.
Like, it's kind of like boxing someone in, and kind of is the opposite of creating space for someone in a way. But we'll talk more about a lot of these concepts, a lot of this jargon. If you're not familiar with it, you will become familiar with it. And we're hoping you're already curious about it. But I'm excited to really unpack like this space for myself and, with Lily. And I'm so lucky that we met each other through work, and we just became, really, really, you're one of my best friends. So I'm very lucky to
same.
Yeah. Very lucky to go on this journey with you and just keep chatting,
And we're going to take all of you in this journey as you come along with us. And we would love to hear, how does your intuition come through? Do you feel you have any psychic abilities that might show up? And it could show up in many different ways. So we're curious to hear your experiences, and we look forward to hearing more. But thank you so much for listening and joining us. But don't forget to leave us a comment. You find all this information in the information or the comment bar or space.
Yeah. And we'll have a website up.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, we're working on our website now. So you can leave your comments, and we would love to know your stories. And hopefully we'll be setting up like a Google Voice mailbox where you can call in. And
that would be fun.
And talk about your experiences, your energetic experiences, your psychic experiences, and just really, be open to sharing.
Yeah. Or any ideas that you would like us to talk about, just hit us up, and we cannot wait to talk more in our next episode.
Yeah. You will hear us on the next episode of Psychic Girls Next Door. Thank you so much for listening.